Welcome to the Tradies in Business podcast with your hosts Warwick Bidwell and Nicole Cox. Divert your phone and grab a brew as Waz and Nick unpack tips, tales, secrets and stuff-ups from guests both inside and outside your trade, helping educate and inspire you to break the cycle of gut-busting and money stress and create a true trade business.
Hey, Coxie.
Yes, Waz. I'm nervous now.
Surprise!
Yeah.
Don't you love it when we do these intros and you go, so how are we going to intro this episode? And I go, oh, I've got an idea.
It makes
and I
me
hit
shake
record and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going to say now? Hey, I've got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe in life after death?
Oh my goodness, that's a big question.
Nah, it's a little tiny question.
I do.
You do?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
So are you going to come back as something?
I'd like to come back as one of my animals.
Which one?
You can take your pick. They're all very, very spoiled and loved.
I was going to say, they get looked after pretty well.
They
I'm
do.
not surprised you want to come back as one of your pets.
Mm.
So if you could be any sort of animal, what would you be?
A cat.
Oh, we couldn't be
You
friends.
didn't expect that, did you?
No, we couldn't be
Or
friends.
an eagle. If I was going to be a bird, I'd be an eagle. I love eagles.
Is that so you can like soar over the top of everybody
Yes.
and crap on them whenever you want to?
Absolutely.
And there is my segue.
Well done.
You probably figured that out.
I did.
G'day, listeners. Welcome to Tradies in Business Radio.
Oh, cha-ching.
I'm doing the jazz hands thing. I even lifted my leg up a bit.
You did.
When I did that.
That was it. I should have taken a photo. That was a little weird.
We'll throw a photo up on Instagram. So welcome to Tradies in Business Radio. It's a podcast. You're here with us, Waz and Nick. And today we're actually talking, we're really excited about today's episode because we're talking to the Australian Tax Office.
Will we put a sound effect in there or something?
You need to listen to this one.
It is important.
Because if you go back to our stupid little intro about eagles and coming back as your pets, we're talking to one of the national directors from the Illegal Phoenix Task Force.
Sounds so serious.
I reckon a lot of our listeners would know what an illegal phoenix is, or a phoenix company.
Do you think they understand that terminology, though? I wasn't familiar with the terminology, but I knew exactly what it was.
Well, there's a difference between an illegal phoenix and just a regular phoenix.
Yes.
See, there's phoenixes and then there's naughty phoenixes.
Aren't phoenixes birds?
Yes. They're like eagles, but
they
rise
back to
from
life?
the ashes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. It's a mythical bird that rose from the ashes, right? Hence the
I
term.
thought it was real.
Not really. So, so our listeners probably, you might have come across a phoenix. You've probably read the paper and heard about it. But basically, the difference between a phoenix company, which is, you know, a company that goes into liquidation and then reinvents itself, restarts under a new business name or new directorship or whatever, that's not necessarily against the law. That's just, you know, bad economics, bad management. That sort of stuff does happen. Some of you might have even experienced that yourselves. And unfortunately, that does often mean that creditors don't get paid or don't get paid in full. Now, when that becomes I guess, a naughty phoenix,
A naughty
bird is is when the directors of those companies actually do that on purpose, and they strip the assets out of the company and do all sorts of other funky stuff to shirk. They're shirkers, dirty shirkers. They're shirking their responsibility. And some of the most affected industries are construction and development. So that's why we thought this was a really important episode for you. We managed to secure one of the national directors from the ATO on this particular program. And so he's going to explain to you illegal phoenixes, how to spot them, what to do if you do spot one, how to avoid getting taken for a ride by one. So there's some really, really important information in here if you care at all about getting paid for the work that you've done for another company.
I don't know a single person that doesn't.
There you go. So everybody is now going to listen to the next 30 minutes talking about tax.
Enjoy.
No. Alrighty, so with us today at the Tradies in Business podcast, although we were going to call this Tradies in Business Radio at some stage, weren't we?
I think we forgot about that. That was so last week.
That's old news. We're joined by Sam Simpson from the ATO. G'day, Sam.
How you going?
Very well, thank you, Sam. It was like a little bit of dead air there, just as I introduced you, and I thought,
This is a terrible timing
hello,
for a glitch.
ASIO's intercepted the call already.
So I think I got a little bit of lag here, but so if need be, I can take the video off. But and
We'll see how we go, mate. But so Sam, so I don't make a meal of it, can you tell our listeners what your role is at the ATO and maybe a bit of your backstory, mate, how you came to be sitting here talking to us professional radio announcers?
Sure. So I'm Sam. I work at the ATO. I'm a national director in the Phoenix Task Force. So the Phoenix Task Force is set up using multiple agencies working together to try to reduce the impact of illegal Phoenix. I've been in this role for a couple of years, so my role is really around trying to coordinate a coordinated approach across government to treating illegal Phoenix, but also have a number of compliance teams across the country that all work together and undertake activities to treat illegal Phoenix as well. So my job's around the strategy, the governance, and of that task force. I've been in the ATO for about 20 years now. Joined after I was working in a property development organisation prior to that, doing accounting work, and when the government brought in the GST system, they did a massive recruitment into the ATO to try to get businesses up to scratch and help them out really, and to try to get ready for the GST, and I came in under that process.
Yeah, right. I'm showing my age here, but I very, very much remember GST and all the kerfuffle around that.
It was
with
so scary as a business owner.
Yeah, it was like going to be the end of Australia.
That's right. And yet somehow we all survived.
Yeah, it's amazing that. Yeah. Like Y2K. So I guess, we'll jump straight into talking about Phoenix companies. What on earth, for those that don't know, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners, sadly, probably know what a Phoenix company is, and I suspect may have been on the receiving end of a not so positive experience around that. But can you expand on that a bit for the rest of our listeners, Sam?
Yeah, sure. So Phoenix company is where a company basically deliberately liquidates their business. They do that to defeat any creditors, to defeat paying any taxes, state and federal taxes, superannuation, employees, and it's our focus is on the deliberate behaviour where they do it as effectively a business model, and unfortunately, it's quite common where businesses. Some businesses do that, and it affects creditors, employees, and the government in terms of all of the revenue and wages and so forth that are lost. So it's that's what Phoenix companies are, but there is a difference between companies that do legitimately run into financial difficulties and have to put a company into liquidation. So they're not really our focus. People can wind up a company and start a new business and continue on with life quite legally. But our focus is about the businesses that do it deliberately and take deliberate steps to avoid paying their creditors and strip assets out of the company along the way.
So how prevalent is this, Sam? Obviously it's an issue for the ATO to have a task force and for us to be speaking to you today, but how big is the problem here in Australia?
So it's pretty large. So we've estimated that it costs between 2.8 billion and 5 billion every year, and that's broken up between the cost to businesses, the cost to government, and the cost to employees. So it's about $3 billion a year that it costs businesses, and that's where where they basically lose money from dealing with a Phoenix company that has left them with a debt that they can't collect. And then you've got the employees, nearly $300 million in unpaid wages and superannuation and employee entitlements. And then the government is 1.1 billion in federal taxes and state taxes, like state payroll taxes and so forth.
Yeah. It just boggles my brain that people. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. I've been walking around on the earth for long enough to know that the human race has some interesting members of it, but it just blows my mind that companies or people, behind these companies would deliberately go into liquidation just to dodge payments. It just anyway, that's my moral statement for a Friday. But
it's very surprising as to how many deliberate. Anyone in business, particularly in the property construction type of industries, that they would have seen it and potentially it would have happened to them. So
Do you
it is unfair.
Sorry, Sam. Do you find it's occurs more in certain industries?
Yeah, definitely. So we find it's pretty prevalent in the property and construction industry, but it's also prevalent in a lot of labour hire industries, agricultural, horticultural and meat processing industries and labour hire, payroll services, and to a lesser extent, mining, transport, cafes, restaurants and security. So,
I'm really confused how, and this is probably not a question that you can answer from your viewpoint, Sam, but I'm really confused how if a company goes into liquidation, and as you say, can be done quite legally, but then they can go on to own another business after that point. That boggles my mind that we don't have some more protective procedures in place to prevent those people then either going and making the same mistakes or, again, illegally doing what they're doing as a choice, as a business model. That's quite mind-blowing. So to know that there is a task force looking for these kind of businesses, trying to prevent these kind of outcomes for tradies particularly, is great for us. It's quite comforting.
Yeah. Look, the agencies on the task force, that there are some powers to try to effectively stop businesses and directors and people from doing this. And so we work closely with the relevant state and federal building licensing commissions and ASIC as well so directors can be banned from operating companies. Unfortunately, they could utilise straw directors. So get people in that effectively have a clean background and put them in charge of the company, but they effectively still control the company. So,
Holly, how do people even think of this stuff? I'm sorry, little old naive me is really struggling with this idea at all.
It's okay, Coxie. It's not a scary world out there.
It is scary. How do people even think about these ideas? I just don't understand the whole premise of that kind of fraudulent behaviour, doing something that has such a massive impact, not only on the lives of the people that you've been dealing with, but for the entire community, the entire country. I don't know, how do those people sleep at night, first and foremost, but how do they even come up with these crazy ideas? And then how much pressure does that put on you as a task force to try and keep ahead of whatever these trends are?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they really have to live with their own conscience, really, because but yeah, it does put a lot of pressure on trying to stop and avoid that that behaviour. But I suppose it's really about the best we can do is we have those agencies, the 37 agencies that are part of the Phoenix Task Force, and trying to work together. And with that collaboration, you can share information and share data, and you basically can identify the behaviour quicker and treat it. Yeah, but as well as that, we rely a lot on the community providing us information as well to us where they're affected. So we get a lot of information coming in from the community.
So we'll dig into the specifics, I guess, in a second. I just wanted to ask, what are some of the most challenging aspects of your role and also for the task force in actually trying to find these offences?
Plenty. There's plenty of challenges. So really, when they're it's really around our compliance areas that deal with this sort of behaviour, that they have to unwind some really complex groups and do some pretty detailed, complex financial investigations, and that's about getting data and information, and working with working with the other agencies to get the information that they have as well. But we also do have some formal powers within tax that helps us to get that information. So we get information from the banks around information going through bank accounts. We have formal powers where businesses are required to give us information, and sometimes we can go out and get that information from the businesses to pull a picture together, and then that helps us to develop a treatment strategy to either get them on track if they can be brought back on track, and the businesses. So that's the ultimate goal. If we can get businesses to start complying and realise that it's better just to work fairly, but if we can't get them back on track, we have to remove them from the system.
Mm-hmm. So I suppose listeners would be wondering, okay, well that's all well and good. How do you know if you're dealing with a Phoenix company, either a legal one or an illegal one? I mean, is there anything our listeners can look out for? Is there things that they should be aware of, and if they do notice anything?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is to really know who you're doing business with. So there are a number of ways to do that. You can go on to abr.gov.au and look at the business that's registered and the directors and the contact people there. You can go to ASIC and work out whether or not the company, who the directors are of the company, when it was registered, historical directors, those sort of things. You can even go to the building construction commissions and identify building licenses. But I think, and then you've got your open source information around, at least once you know who you're dealing with, who the director is there any information that's on the internet or through your colleagues that you're working with that about their previous or past behaviour? But then, so once, I think it's good to know who you're dealing with, but then these are really business decisions, but if you don't know who you're dealing with, or you're entering into a contract, you probably need to be wary of the credit terms that you provide when you're doing the work. You get a deposit up front or get progress payments, and you don't let the payments lag for too long. And I suppose for some of your larger contracts, you can get credit reports on. There's credit agencies out there that can give credit reports on companies. So there's various sort of things that you can do, but I think one of the most important things is really know who you're dealing with.
And so much of this comes back to just good business fundamentals and business best practice of the number of people we hear of that enter into verbal agreements for large sums of money to complete works, and there's no contracts, or they're copied and pasted from a document they found on Google, and they're just leaving themselves exposed, because if they do happen to be dealing with an illegal Phoenix company, then it's probably they're going to be exposed to losing a bunch of money, I'm guessing, Sam.
Well, that's right. I mean, people are really busy. Everyone's busy, and you want to tradies want to focus on doing the work that actually gives them money. So it's not always easy to find the time to do the research and to get good contracts in place and good credit terms in place. But bit of effort in there in terms of trying to get that planning would sort of reduce their risk of being burnt by Phoenix operators.
I'm really intrigued to know that. So your task force has found somebody who is I'm not sure if I'm going to term this correctly, so forgive me and please correct me if I get it wrong, but they're operating an illegal Phoenix business. What happens to that person? What happens next? What do you do as an agency to either prevent them from continuing or to educate them on how not to continue in that way? What happens?
So, like, there's a whole myriad of things that can happen from depending on how risky they are, I suppose, and how large and the impact of them. But it could simply be is trying to reduce the debt that they've built up by increasing the debt collection strategies. We could ensure that their lodgements are up to date around their GST and their business activity statements and tax returns. Then we might simply just refer information to other agencies to do something on that business, and it might be a sort of quite easy light touch, but then it can progress through to a complex sort of audit type of function, and that audit would generally might look at the whole group as a whole, and then for the worst of the worst, we could refer it off for criminal investigation by either ASIC or the ATO can do criminal investigations as well, where there's identified fraud. So, but that's pretty rare. So that's really the worst of the worst that goes through to that point.
Sounds incredibly complex. my mind is boggling.
I did some audit work when I was in my PY sort of transition professional year, because I studied as an accountant. It's a fairly long time ago now, and I decided audit wasn't for me. There was just so much work involved, and you're pouring through transactions and trying to link things together. And I mean, that was back before computers and electricity, but I mean, data matching must have made a lot of this easier, Sam. But the question I had was and I hear people talk about Phoenix trading as though any type of Phoenix business is illegal and immoral. But the reality is, and you mentioned this before, you can actually go into liquidation and then start another business so long as you're within the bounds of the law. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, even in the property and construction sector, the margins can sometimes be that tight that just the normal economic impacts or one of your major customers stops paying you, and all sorts of economic impacts can affect your business, and effectively you need to go into liquidation to basically wind your company up because you can't afford to pay your debts anymore. And that's unfortunate, and it's definitely unfortunate for all the creditors that do miss out of getting paid under those. But no, that's not necessarily illegal. It's really so that the liquidators come in, and when that occurs, and they'll try to get the best sort of dividend for their creditors and employees they can by, it's not illegal. It's really illegal where they've taken deliberate steps to strip the assets out of the company prior to the company going into liquidation, so that there's nothing for the creditors at the end of it, or that they've continued to trade for a long period of time where they knew that they couldn't ever pay their debts and they kept continually racking up the debts. So that's called insolvent trading. So there's plenty of situations where a business just needs to go into liquidation, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. So are there any other ways for tradies to spot illegal Phoenixes?
Yeah, I think it's some things like where you can see that their whole workforce is just that they have used previously is transferred to a new company, whereby you can see that they're operating in the same industry, the same customers, the same suppliers, but under a different name, sometimes even a similar name. So really, it's around doing the same sort of thing that they were previously doing, but under a different company name.
Yeah. Definitely. It sounds sus just from a common sense point of view.
Of course it does. And I don't know why anybody would be putting their hand up to work. You know, if you're a staff member and on Friday the business is called this and in a week's time it's called something else, that'd be a red flag. I'd be out of that door as quick as I could.
Yeah, you'd be looking for a new job.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Hopefully, yeah. And so let's say someone, smells a rat, Sam, as a supplier or an employee, what should they do? Is there somewhere they can go? Like, is there a whistleblower line or something like that they can ring?
Yeah, there is. So basically, you can make a tip-off to the ATO, and I'll give you the number, and I'll give it to you a couple of times if you like. It's also on ato.gov.au.
Okay.
But you could do the search function there. But the number is 1-800-060-062. And you can make tip-offs there and can be anonymous as well. So,
okay.
If it's that when you make that tip-off, it's you can identify it as Phoenix, and it'll get streamlined through to the Phoenix area to be looked at and reviewed.
Yeah, right.
So what happened? I'm intrigued to know what happens then, because I'm, we talk a lot here about negative reviews or different horrible ways in which people like to impact on business, their competition mostly. If I decided I'm really cranky with my competition down the road, the plasterer down there, he's undercutting me, so I'm going to dob him in just to make his life a little bit stressful. Are there immediate things that you're actually looking for so you can disqualify those that aren't legitimate complaints?
Yeah. So no, that's definitely legitimate. A lot of dob-ins, would simply be not founded and just a disgruntled sort of associate or colleague or potentially husband or wife or something. So that does occur. So it's just about reviewing that information, utilising the data and other intelligence that we have as well as the information from the community. And then they make an assessment as to where it would go, and sometimes it stays within the Phoenix Task Force. Sometimes it might go off to go off to another agency because there's a specific thing that they can do or it's related to them. So it all comes through the one area and then gets assessed and we work out where it goes.
Yeah, great.
Is it a timely process? I mean, does it take a long period of time? Because this sounds really complicated to me and like it would take a long period of time. Is it, obviously you have quite a large task force to help you with these things, but there seems to be a lot of different facets and a lot of different areas to investigate and look through. So is it a big big investment of time that you need to put into each one of these complaints and finding out whether something needs to be done or not?
Well, it really all depends exactly on what the complaint is. If it's simply just, say, superannuation that is not being paid, then all of those will get looked at and get followed up and get followed up reasonably quickly. But if it's a really complex arrangement, multiple Phoenix companies, then it might take a long time to unwind and do something with. And even with the worst of the worst, that do go through and get referred off for criminal investigation, they can take years. So the investigation process, and then it goes through to the courts, and it can be a really long time. So it really depends on what information's coming through and what treatment is applied.
Question from me, Sam, around I'm big on conversion rates, so I wonder how many cases you investigate that actually get successfully resolved.
I actually don't have the figures on that, but it would. We do probably in the hundreds of cases every year, and the revenue that we raise through tax assessments and collecting that is. Since the task force has operated, over $500 million. So although we do get probably to 1,000 job-ins a year, it's hard to correlate that to exactly an outcome as to an audit or a criminal investigation, because you might get multiple job-ins. Well, you would in some of the big cases. You get multiple job-ins for the same group, and so it's really hard to give you an answer to that conversion rate. But,
no, it's interesting numbers though. The number of people that do report it, and then how many of those actually turn out to be, I guess, worthy of investigation or legitimate complaints is I think, a fairly small number compared to the amount of money that's at stake here. You know, the $3 to $5 billion. There's some pretty decent chunks of debt being dodged here by some of these operators, which is just. It's bloody terrible, to be honest.
I guess that's where I come in with not understanding how they can go on and, they got it wrong the first time. How do they get to do it again and potentially make the same mistakes? How do you ensure that and that's a whole nother discussion for a different department, I'm sure, but it's...
That's for the ethics department.
These people have got to meet their maker on some form eventually, surely. Surely they stop and think. But yeah, it is such a complex problem. I'm intrigued to know if it's just big business or it is small business. So I'm thinking in terms of a tradie, my immediate thoughts are those big project builders. I'm sure that that's happening left, right and centre. Personally, I even know of a few. But can the same thing happen with a small builder, or can the same thing happen with a plumber or an electrician? Is that something that you often see as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's across the board in all size businesses, so we see it across them all. It's just all of them.
So it's not just confined to big operators. It's the mum and dad operation that do this sort of thing as well.
Yeah, sometimes, and sometimes. When they do start to be run into some sort of financial trouble, they can often be preyed upon by what we call pre-insolvency advisors, and so they might get a cold call out of the blue, and they'll say something like, we can get you out of this trouble, and ultimately they give them advice that is bad advice and that is Phoenix behaviour. And so that is one of our focus areas as well, targeting those promoters and facilitators that they might not even be registered for as a professional advisor. They might just be people that understand how it works and have set up some sort of recovery business. And we've seen that quite a bit. So that is our focus areas for it. I mean, we're not about punishing the people that have made the mistake, that have given bad advice. It's so we would prefer to target those promoters and facilitators, and trying to stop that behaviour and stop them from giving advice that is basically incorrect.
What a horrible thought to think that you're going through the worst moment in your life, your business is going down the gurgler, you're looking at this kind of process to follow, and somebody will prey upon you in that moment and give you poor advice because you're in such a panic you wouldn't think to look into their credentials and make sure they're a legitimate business that isn't doing the same thing that you're trying to prevent yourself from doing. Yep. My goodness, I'm quite terrified.
So I suppose that also begs a question, Sam, of if someone is in trouble in their business, things aren't going well and paying debts is difficult, what are some steps they should take to, I suppose, do it properly and maybe avoid making a mistake and choosing the wrong advisor as well in that scenario?
Yeah, I think in those situations, you really the majority of advisors absolutely have integrity. So they just need to go and see an advisor that can help them, and that can potentially help them with restructuring advice and advice around sort of managing their creditors. So my advice would be for them to get professional advice, and sometimes that advice might be that the business has gone too far and they need to liquidate, and that can happen as well. But I think just get advice from a reputable advisor. So
and that would be, an accountant or an insolvency lawyer or someone who's got those professional qualifications and membership and everything.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, not some guy with a business card that's just leased a shop on the corner yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Cool. So, Sam, I have one question I'd like to ask all of our guests. I'll be fascinated to hear what your response to this one is. So if you had 1,000 tradies in business in a room, what's one piece of advice you would like to leave them with?
Okay. I think just be fair. Treat people fairly, and when running a business, play by the rules, because, you have to, you're working, you're competing for the same work, and when you're not playing by the rules and your competitors are not playing by the rules, it's unfair. So that's the advice I'd give.
No, it's a common theme, Sam.
It is, and it's the Australian way. Just be fair.
Yeah.
Look after you, mate.
Fair go, mate.
That's it. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate your time, Sam. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that you're ahead of us in Adelaide, even though we're further east. But anyway, I'll work that one out over another coffee.
You'll get ahead of us later on.
And mate, if you can, so if someone's got concerns about an illegal Phoenix, or they want to actually tip off the ATO, what's the best way for them to do that, Sam?
Yeah, go to ato.gov and search for tip-off, or give us a call on 1-800-060-062.
Awesome, and just mention illegal Phoenix, and do the right thing, I suppose, and call someone out. Yeah. All right.
Right.
Thanks again, mate.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks very much. See ya.
You've been listening to the Tradies in Business podcast with Warwick Bidwell and Nicole Cox. Find out more about today's guest, tools for your trade business, and other cool stuff at tradiesinbusiness.com.au.